Didn't get everything you wanted this holiday season? Spring Creek Model Trains can help. With a huge inventory featuring today's top manufacturers, Spring Creek Model Trains is sure to have just what you're looking for. Check them out in Deschler, Nebraska, on their website, springcreekmodeltrains.com, or come shop their huge selection at the Railroad Hobby Show in the Stroh Building, January 24th and 25th in West Springfield, Massachusetts. Or give them a call at 402-365-7628. If you're looking to bring more realism to your layout industries, the place to go is the Railroad Hobby Show in West Springfield, Massachusetts to see Tully models. You'll find Kevin in the Mallory Building with a wide variety of products from Industrial Modeler Supply and Southern Tier Grain Modeler Supply, including new announcements to take your trackside industries to the next level. For more, check out their website at tullymodels.com. Hey, do you like free stuff? As a member of the operating crew, you'll get a chance to win awesome prizes each month. For less than a dime a day, you'll be entered to win, and just as important, your support helps keep every episode from behind a paywall and free of those unrelated and annoying commercials you hear on other podcasts. Sign up today at aroundthelayout.com/crew, and thank you for your support. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody. Happy holidays and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott. So glad you could join us. We've reached the end of 2025, and it's time to take a look back at the year. And to do that, joining me is the editor of Cowcatcher Magazine, Tim Blackwell. Tim, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Ray. It's glad to be back on.
Glad to see you again back on the show. But I saw you, what was it, back in October? I think I was in Texas in October, wasn't I? And
that sounds about right. Yeah, you stopped by, and I think we were having an operating session that night.
It wrapped up a full day of railroading. I went out with Dave Appenasano, and we did Railfan, holy mackerel, all over in the DFW area. And then we wrapped it up with an operating session on your N-scale layout and had a blast. And for me, it was really cool because your N-scale is still DC. And
correct.
I've never really got to experience that. I got into model railroading in the DCC era. So it was really cool to see kind of the struggles and the things that had to be done to make multiple trains run on a DC layout. And that was your layout for sure.
Yeah. It's I'm learning, and I knew, I'm not amongst the most popular operations set, it's DCC. So yeah, it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And I think you might have been at the 19th or 20th session that we've done in the last 2 to 3 years, I think. So it's kind of been a slow progression, but we're getting there.
Well, we had a lot of fun. It was definitely an interesting take, but we got to run trains and do some switching, and I had a blast. Anytime I'm offered a chance to operate trains, I don't care what scale. I don't care if it's DC or DCC. It doesn't matter. It's a chance to run trains, and you'll never hear me complain. I always find a way to have a great time. So I appreciate you having Dave and I over on really kind of short notice too, to be able to do that. And we had a good time there and got caught up a bit, but glad to have you here on the show because I know at Cowcatcher Magazine, you're keeping your finger on the pulse when it comes to things happening in the hobby and also in the prototype. And we're going to go over some of the big newsmakers of 2025 and kind of take a look back at them. And why don't you start off with what you would say would be the biggest newsmaker of 2025?
Well, I'm sure you can guess it, Ray. It's tariffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's obviously taken a lot of bandwidth this year since it's happened. It's still an issue. I think there are some maybe signs of encouragement on the horizon, but yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah, seemingly, something tough to navigate for many, including one figuring out what it all meant in the beginning. It was quite a challenge, and quite an education was required just to figure out what was going to be applied to it, and then led to a lot of speculation in between.
Yes, that was it. And the immediate response from the model railroad manufacturing community was that, get in front of the cameras and the microphones and remind everybody that while we may think that model railroading is the biggest thing of all, it's still a very small piece of the economy, if you will. It's a lot of small mom and pop manufacturers. These are small companies, even the larger ones. They don't have a ton of people on staff, So something like this, with the magnitude of it and the potential at the time to charge 145% tariff, was just devastating. And the industry got quite vocal about it. And they still are working through the Hobby Industry Coalition, trying to get their message across to Capitol Hill. But yeah, it took a lot of folks by surprise.
Yeah, one of the things, I guess, with any challenge, you always look for the positives that come out of it. And I would say one of the big positives that came out of it is the tightening of the model railroad manufacturing community. It seemed them all coming together, all working together, not only to try to bring awareness to the problem, but then work together creatively to come up with some solutions that helped everybody.
Yes, and that's not uncommon in this industry. The manufacturers work with each other. I've never perceived it as an intense rivalry among manufacturers. The Hobby Industry Coalition is made up of, you have Rapido, you have Atlas, you have Walters. They're among the manufacturers that lead that effort. So they're working together. And that's important. When things like this happen, then everybody has to come together.
Yeah, everybody was facing the same challenge. It wasn't really unique to one particular. It was pretty much broad and across the entire spectrum. So yeah, good to see them come together and work together. Yeah, we think of these guys as like, big competitors, right? And that get them in the same room, they're going to fist fight with each other and, throw things at each other and those kinds of things. But that's not the case whatsoever. They all understand each other's struggles, and it's great to see them all work together and head forward.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things is that they're all in the same manufacturing plant in some cases. They're using some of the same manufacturers. And of course, majority of it's done overseas. So yeah, they've got to work together. I did kind of a little spot check on some pricing just to see what, the impact has been as of today. And in March, I bought some N-scale DC GP38-2s, $129.95 was the retail price. That very similar locomotive today is $177.95.
Yeah, it's had a significant effect on pricing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. 25-30% is,
And what is the market seemingly reacted to that? I mean, I personally don't know if I've slowed down, maybe a little bit, because, obviously a little bit more of my budget is going away because of the higher prices, but I still haven't overly balked. What is the pattern seem to be, or what's the trend seem to be?
What I see is some folks are cutting back a little bit, but by and large, everybody's still moving forward. And not to plug our January, February issue, but we have the 2026 State of Model Railroading Survey results in it. And one of the questions we always ask is basically, are you spending as much, in the last year as you did the year before? And generally everybody said yes. Now, they may be spending that, they may be getting less product.
Right.
But, it's, I don't think it's like everybody's just pulling on the reins and saying, whoa.
I think one of the things that definitely helps from my seat here is seeing the trend in our hobby of smaller layouts, and the shelf layout is hot right now. And we've seen that with We've talked to quite a few folks that are doing the smaller layouts. Again, mine goes back to Kinzer Hurt and the episode we did with him, where it definitely has less of an economic impact when you're only buying 2 or 3 locomotives than, say, 8, 10, 12 locomotives and trying to maintain a larger roster, or modeling a class 1 and trying to do bigger main lines. If you do like branch lines and under control, it definitely seems to help the impact of these higher prices.
Yeah, it does. Although I know some guys that are buying locomotives by the dozens, to upgrade their layouts or whatever, as recently as last month. But, and this goes back to the thing that we have always said, especially like in the hobby industry circle, is that model railroading will be only as expensive as you make it. You can do a lot, such as a small shelf layout, and you don't have to go buy one of everything. You can have a couple of locomotives like you suggest, and 20 cars, and you can have a ball operating. host a 2-man operating session or something like that. It doesn't have to be elaborate.
Yeah, and I think that, and let's look at the world as a bigger scale, on a bigger scale. Not only the cost of locomotives and everything else, the cost of real estate going through the roof. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And younger folks just simply can't afford to buy big houses with big basements and fill them with railroads.
Well, I mean, look at us. Could we do that when we were a lot younger?
Not nearly as much either. No.
I mean, when I first got married, we had a 2-bedroom apartment, and I was lucky to get one of the bedrooms, and basically I had a 4x6, That was it. In our first house, kind of the same thing. I got one of the bedrooms, but it was a 12x12, and you do what you can in that space.
That's right. Yeah.
And it wasn't until later in my life that I got the big layout room I always dreamed of. And Ray, I wanted to jump back in on the tariffs real quick. I mentioned earlier that there may be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Just here recently in November, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representatives extended 178 existing China Section 301 exclusions. Okay, so what that means is, and these exclusions were set to expire November 29th, and now they've been extended till the 10th of November 26th. What that means is within that sector are a lot of categories, including model railroading and radio control and plastic model kits and so forth. So and this is reported by the Hobby Industry Coalition. What it says is that now there's some focus on this industry and those industries that are within that 301 exclusion. And there's a possibility that tariffs could get reduced or eliminated at some point. Now, in other words, the groundwork is being laid for that potential. Nothing's been done. Everything's still the same. But the industry is viewing that as a positive sign.
Well, excellent. That's some good news for folks that are looking to keep those prices down and obviously make things hopefully affordable again. Let's talk about some other big news that has happened in 2025.
I think another one, and it's pretty recent here, is Atlas Model Railroad Company's acquisition of Microtrains. There's been a lot of speculation about the future of Microtrains, and the forums lit up and the Facebook pages lit up, but that's something that I think everybody's going to be keeping an eye on this year.
Yeah, it's another one of those circumstances where these smaller industries, and you talked about them, there's a lot of them in the model railroad industry that are the mom and pop and the family business and smaller and aren't governed by a board of directors or traded publicly. And their fate is usually either sell or fold. And if the family doesn't have a plan in place and the younger ones aren't interested, this is what happens. Again, they either fold or get sold. And I think for this case, it's good to see them not fold. It'll be interesting to see how Atlas handles them.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that things will go on as is, and Atlas kind of hopefully cooled down some of those who got a little overly excited about this and saying that, their mission is to preserve the Microtrains product line. Will it be 100% the same? I don't know. Things change. It'll be interesting to see.
That's for sure. And, I know people reached out right when it happened and even asked us to cover it here on the podcast. And it was, I don't know, I think you're reading about as much as anybody else knows when it comes to it in, publications like Cowcatcher and others. And again, it's a wait and see how they're going to handle it. Maybe they don't even know and have a full plan. Atlas just made the acquisition, and, we'll have to see what their plans are in the future for Microtrains.
Well, at least as you a little earlier, it's not going out of business. It sounds like we're still going to have them around, and that's positive. But you're right; these are small companies, and at some point, company, if it doesn't have a solid succession plan, if there are no interested buyers or anything like that, then that's what happened. And it's not limited to the model train side of this hobby industry. We got news a couple of weeks ago about a distributor, a family-run distributorship that they're going to close at the end of the end of 26.
Right, and that's seemingly the fate of them, and just as much as a fate of a layout. Right, if there's no succession plan for a layout, it goes away, and these model manufacturers. It is painful at times because we become so reliant on these small manufacturers that you hope that they do put a succession plan in place that's effective. But just like life, you never know. It can change in the blink of an eye. And next thing you know, an owner passes or something happens or a health problem, and then they're gone. So be thankful for them while they're here, and hope and root them on that they're able to keep it going for as long as possible.
Well, and not to belabor this, but it is a small industry, and there's a lot of one-person companies out there, and we know a lot of them, but that's what makes it special. That's what makes it passionate. If we were all run by Fortune 500 companies, then we would just be robots. I guess
it wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be fun because, we know when we go around, especially, we're looking at Amherst here in the next month or so, and it's all those small manufacturers along with the big ones, but everybody's passionate about it and they're into it. And if it became a super corporate America thing, it just wouldn't be nearly as fun.
No, it wouldn't. Now, Ray, on the flip side, we have some companies who have a lot of longevity, and number one, Lionel, they celebrated their 125th anniversary in 2025. Then you've got Walthers out there. They've been around since 1930, the 1930s, or 93 years old. Atlas, 101 years old.
Yeah.
They were founded in the 20s. So, we have those companies. And then the NMRA itself, they celebrated their 90th anniversary in 2025. So, there is some sustainable companies out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's great to see that. Great to see longevity within them. And of course, the NMRA turning 90 years old, and all of them proving the point that you really need to be able to kind of reinvent yourselves and keep up. And we've seen major changes in all of those organizations as they've adapted to model railroading throughout the years and incorporated new technology, incorporated new ways to communicate, incorporated all of these really new concepts to keep them fresh and keep them attracting new model railroaders. So congratulations to all four on their incredible longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I still get a kick out of holding a Athearn Blue Box kit and just thinking about all the history behind that simple little kit.
Yeah. And then, of course, Lionel has touched so many lives, from You think of 125 years, how many generations have been influenced by Lionel trains? It's
Yeah.
quite amazing, and still influencing today. I mean, fantastic. And, I know they've also expanded out in different ways and even outside the model railroad community, but keeping themselves going at 125, pretty amazing.
It is. My brother got one. He's about 5 years older than I am, and I have it sitting here in my display case.
Awesome, awesome stuff. So what else was making news in 2025?
One of the things, and you have covered it on the Around the Layout podcast, that's freelance model railroading. Now, freelance model railroading is as old as model railroading it is. You had years ago, you had some very famous freelance model railroads like Alan McClellan's V&O and John Allen's Gory and Defeated. And that tradition has continued, but it really kind of came to a head this year, I think. And I think you might agree that freelance model railroading really took center stage, of all places, at the Colorado Rail Prototype Meet. And it was just a phenomenal event, as I understand it. Now, you were there in person, from what I understand.
I was.
But there's some really special things going on with freelance model railroading, and the technology, the decaling, the variety of products lends itself to this type of modeling, I think. So kind of want to give a shout out to that segment, and really am looking forward to seeing what comes out of that in the future.
I think that definitely is a result of technology converging, isn't it? Where you have graphic design has become easier. There is so much software out there to be able to help, and there's AI to give it a little bit of a kick in the pants. I don't recommend doing AI for your full logo design, but it definitely, plus there's inspiration and it's all available at your fingertips. More information available to us than has ever been before. You don't have to go to a library or dig through a book or have seen it yourself. You just go on the internet and you find it. And with all these other freelance railroads sharing, and we've got our good friend Chris Palmieri at Home Shops really kind of in the center of all this. And then not only the freelance forum that he ran at the Colorado Rail Proto Meet, but also the freelance hub on his website at homeshops.net. And we'll provide a link to that on our show notes, aroundthelayout.com/207. It's brought them all together, and now it's just all boats rising together, and they just keep adding to it and encouraging each other and sharing ideas. Yeah, I think freelance is just an epitome of all the technology and the amazing creativity that's come together to be able to create your own and be inventive and use that within you to want to design and be your own little model railroad entrepreneur.
Exactly. And you mentioned this earlier about the sharing of ideas, and through YouTube and social media, you can communicate that and build that community much faster, as before, when basically you had to wait for the next issue of the Model Railroad magazine to come out, to learn about another freelance railroad. So it's really it's a growing segment, I feel certain. And it just, in my mind, and let's face it, the prototypes aren't that appealing to a lot of folks. And if you look at a lot of the modelers out there, I think they are probably more fallen flags modelers. But anyway, back to my point is that the freelance community can really do their own thing and add an interesting, fresh element to the hobby.
I love going back to the saying that Michael Gross gave us on the podcast he was on a bit back, where he said, art is a form of protest and model railroading is art. So it is a protest. And I think as we see all of these railroads start to come towards a center, where we've got like Genesee and Wyoming taking over so many short lines and they're losing their character, and class ones are all looking alike and they're kind of losing their character outside of the heritage units, which are completely awesome. And we love this.
Yeah.
But it's all coming together in a similar look where you don't have the wide variety. So freelance is in my mind, a bit of a protest as well. It throws up that whole against the commonality of what's out there in the prototype, and now allows that creative, it's like that creative patchwork of different colors and different colored cars going down the railroad and everything. And now with a freelance railroad, you can now create that. And, speaking of all of them coming to center, we've got a big news story out of 2025 that's prototype related, but is definitely going to affect the model railroader. Let's talk about UP and NS, and that was kind of the big chatter, wasn't it, Tim?
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of funny because about the time that was announced, Canadian Pacific, Kansas City, had just really released their new paint schemes on their locomotives.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of those were painted not too far from where I'm at. But yeah, it's it's got the usual among shippers. It's going to be a big decision by the STB. I don't know if it's good for the industry. I don't know if it's bad for the industry, but it does potentially form the first transcontinental railroad, and it would make a seamless transition. But as one industry executive noted, you still have to stop the train every so often. And, whether it's, obviously for a crew change or for service or something like that.
Well, one thing I can say about this, that they're going to sort out on the prototype side. We really don't get a whole play in it unless you write your congressman and that kind of thing. I think the main thing about it for us model railroaders to know, it's always in a constant flux, isn't it? We're always looking at changes in prototype, and what's here today may be gone tomorrow. And my encouragement for those that are out photographing, just shoot, take pictures, because you are capturing somebody's golden age of model railroading. It also leads me to be, as I was looking to model Norfolk Southern, I never thought I'd be a Don Iris where I would just stick my, draw the line in the sand and say, you know what, from this point back is my railroad and I don't look at anything forward. But that may be what I'm going to have to do if I want to keep the horse head alive.
Well, and we don't know either what the future holds. So we look outside right now. We think today's class ones are a little boring. They all their locomotives look the same, except, they have different paint schemes. And so in our minds, we may be just discounting the future and the present and saying, oh, well, this isn't an exciting time for model railroads like it was back in the 50s and 60s, or for prototype railroads, excuse me. And this is part of history, and how we reflect on that remains to be seen.
Well, it certainly was an interesting 2025. A lot of these stories are going to bleed into 2026. It'll be interesting to see how they all play out, whether it be a UP-NS merger or how the current climate of tariffs play out, and be interesting to see what happens with Atlas and microtrains and much, much more that happened in 2025. We only have just a short period of time to cover all of it. But I think all in all, I think 2025 was a challenging but good year in model railroading. I think a lot of people got a lot of things done. We got together. There was some really awesome RPMs. Like when you mentioned the Colorado RPM in its second year was a highlight of 2025. St. Louis RPM rolling along. That was a highlight for me in 2025, and being able to go there yet again. And Amherst 2025 was amazing, and the things we were able to do there at the podcast, and gave away 5 scale trains locomotives was an excellent part. The podcast had a phenomenal 2025 with so many folks getting involved, has some amazing guests on the show. We ended the year by announcing our ATLP 2027 boxcar. And in the first week of it being on sale, we sold 3/4 of the cars that are available. So
congratulations.
Amazing stuff. So awesome 2025. It's sad to see you go, but here's the 2026 and some awesome stuff going to go on. But we're not done yet looking back at 2025. We asked the question of the month, and the December 2025 question of the month was, what is your biggest model railroading accomplishment of 2025? We're going to take a listen to those answers, and let's get it rolling with an answer from New Jersey.
Hey, all, what's going on? I'm Eddie Benningfield from Delanton, New Jersey. I am an N-scaler modeling the late chassis, early CSX from about 1986 to 1992 in and around Huntington and Logan, West Virginia. My success this year hasn't really been tied to the layout as much as it has been tied to a successful influence campaign in getting my toddler obsessed with trains. We're not originally from the Northeast, so the fact that there is this preponderance of scenic railroads that are within a 2 to 4 hour drive for me is kind of nuts. And in part of trying to discover some of those different opportunities to see some cool steam trains, he's come along with me, right? So running in Northern's 2102, Western Maryland's 1309. We've seen that twice this year just because it's a good halfway point to go see my grandparents who live in West Virginia. And between working on my T-track layout in the basement with him kind of watching, he has slowly gotten the bug. Where in the morning, the first word out of his mouth is usually choo-choo, and we have to go downstairs and play with trains, or we will get a toddler crash out. So outside the temper tantrum, it's a positive confirmation that the bug has taken hold, and hopefully into 2026. He's now a big brother, and I'm holding his 2-week-old sister. Maybe we can get her obsessed as much as he is with trains and turn this into a family hobby. Anyway, take care, y'all. Have a good one.
Sounds like a very successful year in 2025 in the Bedingfield household with a new young one on there. And then, of course, the slightly older brother now getting involved in trains. I'd call that a success, wouldn't you, Tim?
I sure do. It sounds like they got a lot of things going on there. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Awesome stuff. All right, and let's head to Bill Brown.
Hi, Ray and guest. It's Billy Brown from New Jersey. My biggest modeling accomplishment this year is building my HO Inglenook switching layout. Scenery has always been a mental hang-up of mine, so I decided to build this switching puzzle this summer to get some practice with different scenic techniques. All my previous layouts have been stuck in the plywood Pacific phase. On the Inglenook, I progressed further than any other layout I've made before, shaping the landscape, ballasting the track, painting the structures, adding ground foam and static grass. It's not finished, is any layout, but it's at least presentable enough to bring to my local train show over Thanksgiving weekend. Glad I brought it, because the kids at the show had so much fun helping me operate it that one kid decided to forego seeing Santa Claus to give the puzzle another go. I'd say that's the biggest compliment that my modeling can ever receive. Have a happy holidays, Ray.
Well, happy holidays to you, Billy, and awesome stuff that you were able to not only get something accomplished, but then be able to share it with the kids. That's a really cool thing. That's
definitely a tall order over Santa Claus, but you know, he made a comment about scenery, not sure how to do it, not where to start and all that. My experience has been scenery is something that you develop a skill at over several months, years, or whatever, that you don't start doing it right the first time. And congratulations to him for getting out all the scenery equipment and building a scene.
All right, we were in New Jersey for 2. Let's head a little bit north to Wappingers Falls, New York.
Hey, y'all. My name is Dennis Colucci. I'm from Wappingers Falls, New York. And I've had quite a few modeling accomplishments this year. Everything from doing my first super detailed N-scale locomotive to developing a lot of paint schemes for rolling stock for my freelance railroad and pushing the story forward through that, to doing my first hardwire decoder installs and really nailing down those. But of all the things I've done, I think the biggest accomplishment that I've reached this year was completing my first 100% scratch-built structure in N-scale, which was the Hopewell Depot of Hopewell Junction, New York. Everything from going out and measuring the prototype building and getting all the measurements down to figuring out how to translate some of these buildings features into N-scale and how best to get everything to come together in a way that looks just like the prototype. You know, it really pushed my modeling skills forward more than anything I've done so far. So it was a ton of fun to do. And I highly recommend everyone try doing a scratch-built structure at least once in their modeling career, because it's incredibly worth it. Thanks so much for the show, Ray. It's always a great pleasure to have the show on and listen to everyone's stories as I'm working or as I'm going out to drive somewhere. But with that said and done, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, and I can't wait to hear the show.
Well, thank you, Dennis, and happy holidays to you. And it's always great to hang out with you on Monday nights. Dennis does an awesome live stream on Monday nights. We'll share a link in our show notes around thelayout.com/207. And Tim, if anybody's worried about the hobby not being in good hands, Dennis Colucci is one of those young folks that are showing us that we've got a great future ahead of us.
That's phenomenal. What he's doing, gosh, more power to him. That's great.
All right, let's head to Arkansas and our good friend Joey Ginto.
Hey, Ray, it's Joey from the Penn Reading Industrial Railroad. My biggest modeling accomplishment was bringing modelers from all over the region to run trains on my layout. We hosted an open house once a month, and folks came to run their collections. It was always fun seeing a variety of different trains. Most importantly, this bridged the gap in the local modeling community and formed many friendships in our area. We are looking forward to more open houses in our new home soon. Amy and I want to wish you and your family a blessed holiday season.
Well, thank you to you and Amy, and Merry Christmas to both of you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully again real soon at a train event. And yeah, Joey's another one, fairly young guy who's got a lot going on, and him and his fiance and, modeling together. Great story coming out of there.
He's doing what we all need to do to ensure the future of the hobby, and that's getting it in front of people and being generous and willing to show and help people learn. Kudos to him. That's great.
The hobby is so much better shared.
Yes.
Now let's take a trip across the Atlantic. Here we go.
Hey guys, my name is Chuck Hauenstein. I currently live in Warsaw in Poland, and I'd say my biggest modeling accomplishment of 2025 was not the cars I did, not the locomotives, not the decaling, but I got down to doing a module together with my 6-year-old daughter, and we both enjoyed it tremendously. We're currently doing the evergreen trees for the background. And I'd say the best thing about modeling is if you can share it. So I'd say thank you, Ray, for doing this podcast, which gives us an opportunity to share the love for the hobby. And in that spirit, Merry Christmas to you guys.
Well, Merry Christmas to you, and holy moly, Poland. That's amazing. That's amazing. But yeah, awesome stuff you got going on over there.
Yeah, again, that's sharing. And if you can open the eyes of a young person, like that. And I think the more exposure we can give, obviously, it plants that seed. So in Poland, great.
This is a worldwide hobby for sure. That is a global event.
It is.
And now heading down to Florida.
Hello, everyone. My name is Don Iris, co-host on the Around the Layout podcast. And my biggest modeling accomplishments this year was Ralco Industries. It was a siding I had put in. It started off to be an MOW siding, and I turned it into an industry to unload plastic pellets in road salt. And then I also moved the MOW sections over in the back of the Valley Falls engine house. Those two things were probably the biggest things I've done. And I really wanted to get my Worcester yard switches on an iPad so I can just control them by switch rather than with the macros, because sometimes the macros don't actually work out when you're on an operating session. You need to be controlling both ends of the yards individually. So those are a few of my accomplishments for this year. Thanks a lot. Continue listening to the show, and we'll talk to you sometime down the road.
Well, great, Don. And you were certainly a part of the success of Around the Layout podcast in 2025 with your Talking Ops episodes. Those have been a hit. We love talking operations, and it's also great to see that, yeah, your railroad is never done, is it, Don? You're continuing to move on. And I think, Tim, that's just the story of most railroads.
It is. And, did he say he moved an industry on the layout?
Yeah, he's been shifting things around and adding, and yeah, he finds new ways as he operates to find new ways to incorporate new things.
Yeah, you learn when you operate that whether something's going to work or not, and you make changes. And sometimes it's hard to do, but that's great that he's able to do that.
All right, heading out to Rochester, New York, and Ed O'Connell.
Hey, Ray, it's Ed O'Connell from Rochester, New York. My biggest accomplishment of the year is a lot of the stuff that we had talked about in episode 163 back in June when we talked about the Rochester Model Railroad Club. During the course of the year, I removed a lot of the no longer functional and abandoned in place wiring underneath the layout that was just getting in the way. The stuff that was necessary, left in place, neatened it up a bit. In some cases, ran it more efficiently and shortened it, tightened it all up, labeled it in place. And it's much better now and a lot easier to troubleshoot. Also built 2 new panels for the layout. One of them you saw me working on when you visited. And I've since done another one. And I made 2 more functional that had been installed a couple of years ago, but I just got the LEDs up and running within the last week. Still keep it going. Lots more to do, but we're getting there.
Well, making progress is what's important, right? Is a little at a time is how it gets done.
Boy, I tell you what, you might want to give me his name and number, and I'll get him to come over and clean up all the wiring under my layout. My God.
We'll get Ed take a trip to Texas and then check it all out for you. That's for sure.
Just don't look underneath.
No, that's where Ed spends all his time, underneath that layout at the Rochester Model Railroad Club, and he's done an awesome job getting it updated. All right, let's hear from Austin Ogden.
Hey, Ray, it's Austin from Ogden Locomotive Works. My biggest accomplishment in modeling would be, I guess, the start of my little business I'm doing with all the DCC stuff and painting everything. I kind of did it for myself for a time and then actually mustered up the courage to start doing it for customers. It's still, a little touch and go sometimes, but it's definitely one of my biggest accomplishments. So have a great day, Ray.
Well, we certainly enjoy a little entrepreneurial spirit, don't we?
Indeed. And that's what makes this hobby far more interesting is those cottage industries that make a contribution.
Absolutely. All right, let's head down under.
G'day, Ray. Steve Pettit, Mossvale, New South Wales, Australia. By far, my biggest modelling achievement 2025 was to get my single track mainline laid, fine-tuned and operational on my Rio Grande Tennessee Pass layout. After about 4 years of train room construction, insulation, hard wiring, and bench work, it was actually good to get some trains running. Have a good Christmas, Ray, and to all the other guys in the Around the Layout podcast. Feels like a pretty good community of modelers that hang out here, and always enjoy listening to other guys' stories. And look forward to seeing you down under early in 2026. Take it easy, Ray. Bye.
Well, Merry Christmas to you, Steve, and I can't wait to get down under in 2026 when I head there in April and see all you fine folks. And it is a worldwide hobby, isn't it, Tim?
It is. We've got them all over the place.
It reaches every corner of the planet for sure. Let's head out to Brian Sopke.
Hi, Ray. This is Brian Sopke from Sandy, Oregon. To answer the question of the month, my modeling accomplishments for 2025 are twofold. First was actually getting out of state and going to Greeley, Colorado, to the Colorado Prototype Modelers Meet and Freelance Forum. On the layout, my biggest accomplishment was finally getting started on scenery for the railroad. Love the podcast. Can't wait to hear what the other answers are. And have a very happy holidays.
Well, speaking of freelance railroads, there's one right there with the Benton and Southern.
Yeah, and I've got to get out to that prototype meet in 2026 out in Greeley.
That's definitely one to go to. We'll see you there. And off to Kansas City. Here we go.
My name is Mark Steenwick from Kansas City area, and I think my biggest accomplishment of 2025 for the model railroading side of my life is realizing that I can't do it all. So I started scheduling some work sessions and having some more of the well-qualified people in the Kansas City area coming over and helping me with some projects that just weren't getting done with my abilities. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mark. Good to hear from you. And Tim, I think he brings up a really good point about one, setting some goals, and two, when it's time to farm it out or get some help. It definitely nothing wrong with getting the community involved in your model railroad builds. Absolutely
not. If you can't do it, I mean, we all have our specialties. We don't know, most of us anyway, I think, don't know everything there is to know about model railroading. So nothing wrong with asking for help.
It's also a neat thing when you have somebody come over and they help you with it. It puts their mark on your layout. Always something to remember a good friend by, or a fellow model railroader, and it just brings that whole community feeling home to your layout.
It does, and hopefully you learn something from watching them help you out.
Absolutely. All right, and our very last answer to this month's question of the month.
Hey, Ray, this is Doug Ziegler from Yorktown, Virginia. In regards to your question about the biggest modeling accomplished for 25, on my New England Central Palmer Division layout, I have to set goals every year. That's more for me than for anything else, because if I set a goal, it keeps me focused. It allows me to stay on track. And I try to set something that's realistic. In 24, I had a goal to complete my bench work. So in 25, I wanted to get the backdrop up and lay all my track and wire it in order to run trains. And I was able to do that this year. So it was very satisfying to be able to lay those track, get the trains running, and see what changes I wanted to make before I finalized anything. And I'm actually slightly ahead of schedule, and I will be working on some scenery and a bridge. So it's very satisfying to see me meet those goals. And I'm starting to make a list of things that I want to accomplish in 2026. Again, that works for me. May not work for everybody, but it keeps me focused as a fairly organized individual. Looking forward to seeing you in Amherst next month. Thanks for all you do.
Well, thank you very much, Doug, and awesome. We will definitely see you in Amherst in 2026. A great way to kick off the model railroading year of 2026. And Doug talks about setting goals, and I think that's important to kind of get your mindset ready and know that what you want to be able to accomplish in your hobby in the coming year.
Yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are model railroads. And I think it's important that you do have a plan, whether it's doing the bench work or whether it's scenic in a certain area, and stick with it. And before long, you'll have your model railroad the way you want it.
Yeah, it is good to make sure that you're, keeping yourself on track. And, we love talking about model railroading, but you can only talk about it so long. Get out there, get it done, set a plan, get yourself down in that layout room and start accomplishing it. And you're going to find that you do it a little at a time, and then eventually Rome does get built. So, and that being your model railroad. We said that was the last one, but I'm going to ask Tim. Tim, what was your biggest model railroading accomplishment of 2025?
It's funny you asked that, because I think my biggest accomplishment just happened a couple of nights ago at an operating session on the Whitehurst and Pine Ridge Railroad. Everything just seemed to fall in place. Trains ran, wasn't many defects or anything like that. And I accomplished what I wanted to do that night in replenishing some yards, replenishing some industries, and so on and so forth. And it just was a very smooth running evening. And we might take those things for granted, but when you're dealing with a lot of moving parts, little things can happen. And it just so happened the stars were aligned the other night.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, sometimes it does take that, and you have one of those operating sessions that you just go, wow, and then you can't wait to do it again, because it's just, it gets you pumped,
Exactly.
Gets that flywheel turning, and that's what it's all about, keeping those flywheels turning, accomplishing it, having those operating sessions or having those gatherings or getting down and scratch building like Dennis Colucci or any of those accomplishments. Just find something, write a goal down, and then go after it. So I want to thank everyone for joining us on this episode of Around the Layout. If you found something in this episode that'd be useful to a friend of yours, do me a favor, go ahead and share it with them. We appreciate all the support that we got in 2025, and here's to 2026. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone. Happy New Year. And Tim, to you and yours, happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. And happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you and Ray, and folks out there listening. Thanks for joining us, and keep the trains running, and have a good year.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.